What's up, guys? So this is going to be my review for The Flash Season 4 Episode 8, titled Crisis on Earth X Part 3. This episode is where it starts to get interesting. Episode 1 had some great moments. Episode 2 had some great moments too, but this is where the story really picks up. It gets interesting. The Justice League, which is what I'm going to be calling them for the purpose of these reviews, go to Earth X, or more accurately, they're dragged to Earth X while they're unconscious, to a concentration camp, which was super depressing. Like that scene where Quentin Lance of Earth X was lining up the Justice League, slowly walking them up to the death pit, was the most intense scene in the entire crossover. It was crazy intense. Quentin Lance X, was horrifying as a Nazi general. Like, he and Tommy portrayed Nazis by far the best, but Quentin was incredible. He was so scary. Or Paul Blackthorne did a incredible job as portraying a scary Nazi. He 100% should have been Prometheus X, or at least Dark Archer X, Dark Arrow X. That would have been awesome. Oliver Queen, Stephen Amell didn't do that great of a job as a Nazi, not gonna lie. He was always he was really monotone. He never screamed or anything, and he was never that scary. Paul Blackthorne should have been one of the main bad guys of this crossover. It would have been so awesome. And like I said, the whole scene where they walk up to the death pit was so intense. I knew none of them were going to die, obviously, but everything that was going on, and Quentin Lance, or I don't know what his name was, I think he doesn't have a name, I'm just going to call him Quentin Lance of Earth X, was being all scary, and just mainly the music in the background really just tricked me into believing that these guys were actually in danger. These guys might actually die. They actually genuinely made me 100% subconsciously believe that these guys are going to die, and that's crazy. That's just incredible, the way they did that. And then Citizen Steel comes out of nowhere, makes a stupid pun, and shoots some Nazis, and then he just stands there with that stupid smile on his face for a couple seconds, and it was hilarious. I don't know if that's what they were going for, but that moment was really hilarious. I actually laughed out loud. He was just standing there staring at the camera with that smile. It was hilarious. I laughed out loud. I like this Citizen Cold. He's really campy, which can be a little annoying in big doses, but in small doses, it's genuinely hilarious. And then the Ray shows off his powers for the first time, and they look really great. Honestly, they look pretty great. The CGI, it looks good. Who knows? Maybe he's gonna even replace Firestorm on the Legends after the CW Seed miniseries, which I have no clue when that airs. Sometimes, which that was a great transition, sometimes I don't understand the arrowverse writers. They take the two most hated characters in their entire multiverse, the two most hated characters that they've ever created or they've ever had, Iris and Felicity, and they put them in the forefront of the crossover. Like, what? Why? I don't get it. Honestly, I just don't get it. The Iris and Felicity parts were by far the worst parts of the episode, and they were just so unbelievable, but like in a bad way. You could say something's unbelievable like it's good, but this was unbelievable in a bad way. They asked you to suspend your disbelief in non-suspendable ways. Like, Iris and Felicity somehow took out two pairs of highly trained elite SS soldiers, and they did it like coordinated. I mean, come on, that's just ridiculous. In my first two reviews, I said multiple times that it's pretty obvious they couldn't afford more actors. But think about this, alright? They had Iris and Felicity in all 4 episodes, mind you, when they could have had Kid Flash, Vi, Black Canary, Wild Dog, Mr. Terrific, The Atom, Zari, Vixen, and Citizen Steel in more episodes. Or maybe they could have had Martian Manhunter and Diggle in more than cameos. Or maybe they could have also had the Elongated Man and Superman in at least 1 episode, but instead they have Iris and Felicity in all 4 episodes, taking a lot of money off the budget, which just could have went into so much better places, to other actors, special effects, anything. It's like the writers hate their fan base. Wow, that felt great to get off my chest. Okay, back to the review. Everything in between the death pit scene and where Oliver goes undercover is just a bunch of setup. And honestly, it's setup that's done really well. Like, it's a bunch of character developing scenes and plot driven scenes leading up to the climax with the Freedom Fighters and Win, which he was great. Who knew Win could pull off being such a commanding person, because on Supergirl he takes orders. That's all he does. He takes orders and he's funny. Here he's the leader, and honestly I did not see that coming. But either way, the setup again was very important. It was plot driven, it was character developing, and it was fairly enjoyable. But yo, the Reverse Flash fought Superman in the future. That is insane. So did Reverse Flash go to Earth 38, or did Superman come to Earth 1? Or maybe this Superman is from the future where Krypton explodes. Maybe right now Superman is actually learning to be Superman in Smallville, or maybe Krypton explodes in the next couple weeks. I don't know. Or maybe Earth 1 and Earth 38 merge, which is the most likely thing. Is that the next crossover? If, not gonna lie, Superman versus Reverse Flash is a fight I never knew I needed to see, but I really need to see that fight now. Please happen in, if not the next crossover, the one after that, because having the Reverse Flash in 2 crossovers in a row might get a little unoriginal, but I don't care. In 2019, you have this crossover, you got Reverse Flash versus Superman, make it happen. Oliver Queen going undercover as the Dark Arrow, or as the Fuhrer of this world, which doesn't make a lot of sense because he's American. I'd imagine the Nazis would only elect a German, probably, but I don't know, that doesn't bother me that much. The best part was 100% when Quentin figured out that it's his doppelganger instead of the Fuhrer. Quentin, again, he's so scary. He 100% should have been Dark Arrow, Prometheus, like I predicted. That would have been so awesome. It's crazy how well he pulls off being a Nazi. I know I said this already, but I gotta stress this. He's amazing. But then the heroes fighting those soldiers, it wasn't anything special. Honestly, those soldiers are worse than stormtroopers. Well, technically, they're the real stormtroopers. Well, maybe that's why the Star Wars stormtroopers are actually called that, because the real-life Nazi stormtroopers, at least as they're portrayed here, are the worst soldiers in the history of the universe, in the history of the multiverse. It makes you wonder how the Nazis ever managed to take over most of Europe in the 1940s and then take over the world here on Earth X, because these soldiers, they're the worst. They don't even know how to use a gun. They run up to somebody trying to sock them on the head with the gun, and they lift the gun over their head, basically saying, "Hey, punch me in the face, please." They're the worst army fodder I've ever seen. You got the Avengers. In the Avengers, you got the Chitauri. In Age of Ultron, you got the Ultron bots. In Justice League, you got the Parademons. And even in Invasion, you got the Dominators. Here, these soldiers are the most incompetent army fodder I've ever seen. They were born and trained their entire lives to get punched in the face. Red Tornado shows up like we were promised from the poster, and he is a huge improvement he's a huge improvement on the Supergirl design, and him just not being a villain in this. It's really misleading how they put him on the poster on the Nazi side, even though he was not in the slightest. He was actually on the freedom fighters side trying to bomb the Nazis. But I guess technically the superheroes did fight him. It was very misleading putting him on the poster like that. But I just gotta stress how cool Red Tornado actually looked. He looked incredible. I never expected them to make Red Tornado look so cool when you see what he looked like in Supergirl, but he just looks so cool. Also, him flying around, the CGI for him in general was amazing. Red Tornado, the whole fight scene with the Ray and the Flash, that was an awesome fight scene. It honestly looked amazing. The CGI was a bit cartoony, like it looked like a cartoon but with real people. I don't know how to explain it. You might see the same thing, it just looks cartoony, but that's actually a good thing. It made the whole fight look incredible. It looked so good. It was all bright and shiny, and you got wind everywhere, you got electricity and the rays. It looked amazing. That cliffhanger though, with Martin being shot right in the back, that was so sad. The music in the background didn't help at all, making the moment any more cheery. It was so sad. It was a great cliffhanger, don't get me wrong. It was a brilliant way to make people stay after The Flash to watch Legends of Tomorrow. But this was a great death scene. Although technically he didn't die until the next episode, which, by the way, I actually genuinely teared up in that episode. Like, I had my eyes watered watching that episode, watching the Martin Stein scenes, which is better in that episode than it is in this episode, but we get one scene in this episode where he gets shot, and it's a really great scene in a sad way. In conclusion, this episode, or at least the main story, is perfectly crafted. It starts with a crazy, intense scene, then leads into a bunch of really well done setup with some great moments and character developing moments and plot driven moments, and then it leads into an insane, crazy climax, and then ends on a cliffhanger. That's just perfectly structured. You get rid of the side story, this episode is basically perfect. The side story, the Felicity Iris side story, wasn't great, but it was also so forgettable that when I think about the episode, I think mainly or basically just about the main story, and I think about the main story fondly. So maybe the side story wasn't as distracting as I first thought. I give this episode a 9.8 out of 10 in crossover standards and a straight up 10 out of 10 in normal episode standards. This episode was almost perfect, which again, 10 out of 10 doesn't 100% mean perfect, but it's pretty close. It could be perfect. 10 out of 10 could be perfect, but it doesn't mean it is. So what do you think about the episode? Let me know in the comments down below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I gotta make a new rating system because this one just doesn't work. Thanks for watching.